Hello, I'm Linda Seith from The Layered Onion. Thank you for joining us. We will be listening to our amazing creators talk about their art and mental health. 48 million artists all over the world share this lived experience. The Layered Onion was formed to create a supportive community, allowing the creators to focus on their art, bringing their work from the shadows to receive the recognition and opportunities they deserve. Each podcast will feature an artist who talks about their creations and mental wellness. Art is healing. We hope these discussions will inspire you to appreciate the stories behind the creations and, more importantly, inspire your inner creator. Together, we can tackle the stigma surrounding mental health.
Hello, this is Anam Tariq, and I'm located in Aligarh, India. It's in the northern plains of India, and it's nice to be here.
Well, it's really nice to have you. Anam, can you maybe tell people where India is quite a large and diverse country. Maybe you could talk a little bit about where your location is in relation to other things that people might know.
Okay. Yeah, my city Aligarh is in the state of Uttar Pradesh in India, and it's near New Delhi. It's like 2 to 3 hours drive from New Delhi, and so yeah, I'm near to that, to the capital of the country, near to the capital.
All right, wonderful. And how many people live in your area?
Yeah, it's hard to tell that because I have no idea of the population. But yeah, a lot of people live here because Aligarh is quite populated because of the university, Aligarh Muslim University, which is quite well known around the world. So because of its presence, a lot of people come here every year to study and settle. So
So is that how you ended up there, or is that where you were born and raised?
yeah, it's a part of the reason of coming to Aligarh was for my education. But yeah, I wasn't born here, but yeah, my grandparents lived here, my maternal grandparents. So I used to visit Aligarh on vacations every year, twice a year, in fact. But then since 2010, I have shifted to Aligarh with my mother and my brother. So I'm currently here in Aligarh only and studying here since grade 7th.
Oh, great. So maybe you could tell us about your art. And I know you're a poet and writer, but maybe you could tell us what drew you to being a writer and a poet.
Yeah, as far as writing is concerned, so I started writing poetry in 2015. So in when I was in grade 11th. So actually one of my friends suggested me to try my hand at verse since my other classmates did it at that time. So that was one of the reasons. Then I also wanted to express some of my thoughts and emotions, which I thought maybe I could use the medium of poetry to express them. And then my family and my mother especially encouraged me to further myself in this field and to continue my hard work here and to more enhance my art. So I started writing since then.
Okay. And now you study this at the university, correct?
Yeah, I did BA in English and I did masters in English as well from Aligarh Muslim University. So yes, I studied English poetry, prose, drama, etc. But yeah, but right now I have completed my masters. So yes, that's all.
So when you think of great poets that you probably studied and read about when you were in the university, which style of poetry were you drawn to?
Yeah, I read a lot of poets. So, first of all, I was the most inspired by the romantic poets and the romantic poetry, Wordsworth, Keats, and Coleridge, especially. And then later on, I also was very inspired by free verse poetry, lyrics, and especially lyrics and T.S. Eliot's poetry. So I have tried to follow in their footsteps, and I have tried to write poems mostly in free verse and lyrics. But I've also tried to write allegory, dramatic monologue, ode, etc.
So, as your poetry has evolved, has it changed from being more romantic to free verse?
Yeah, I myself, I personally feel that maybe a little my poetry has changed the way I'm writing them. Like initially, they were more simpler and more like a spontaneous overflow of emotions. But later on, I refined my writing and maybe I moved towards writing more free verse and focusing more on writing like in an intricate way, maybe more following the writings of T.S. Eliot. And yes, I think that there has been a change and a slight shift in my writing towards the end of my first poetry collection.
So maybe you can tell me a little bit. First, you had a work published in the Shallot, which congratulations on that. How did you
Thank
find the
you.
Shallot?
Yeah, I actually came across the layered onion on Instagram because, first of all, my poems were published in Lift Collective, another magazine. So through them, I remember I came across the layered onion. So then I came across their magazine that they're launching the Shallot, the first issue. So I wasn't able to submit my work for the first issue, but then I subscribed to that to the layered onion, became a member, and then later on I came to know about the submission call for the second issue. So I thought maybe I should submit one of my poems, and so that's how I came to know about it. And apart from getting my poem published in the Shallot, I also got the chance to place my poetry in the online store of the layered onion. So that was one more thing that I got to do.
Well, that's exciting. You have a new book of poetry out, but have you had other books of poetry?
No, so far I have one book of poetry that is A Leaf Upon a Book, my debut book.
So maybe you can tell me, how did you come up with the name A Leaf Upon a Book?
Yeah, that was just random. Like it wasn't like very much pre-planned or something. I just wanted to talk about. I wanted to see poetry as something light and refreshing. Like whenever we are tired and fed up from our work, and we are looking for some refreshment or some light read. So maybe poetry is something which serves as a refreshing thing. So I compared poetry to a leaf. Like a leaf is a light object kept on a book. So something like that is poetry. A leaf upon a book, something light and refreshing to give a distraction to the readers.
Well, I think that's a lovely image, and the cover art is actually quite beautiful. Did you do the cover art, or did someone do that for you?
No, actually, that has a story. Actually, I came across one of my wallpapers on my phone because they change after every few days. So they get automatically updated. So I came across this cover on that, and then I sent it to my publisher, and the publisher first looked up that if that's available to purchase. So it was there somewhere on the internet to purchase. So they purchased the cover, the wallpaper, and then they modified it in the way it is now. It was not like this initially, it was a little different. So they modified it, the publisher did it, and then they finalized this cover.
So maybe you can tell me, how did the book come about? Putting together
Yeah,
that poetry book.
Yeah, actually, since I started writing, I always wanted to have my own book of poems so that I have a book in which all the poems are written by me. So I wanted to hold my poems in the form of a book. So that was one of the driving factor that led me to get my poems published. Then last year, when I was done with my masters and I was free to do anything, so I started with this project first. I decided that I would first get my book published. So I tried a few publishers and submitted my manuscripts to them. So that's how I started with the work on my book. And I had 25 poems around. So I thought that maybe it's enough to get the first book published. So, and my family members encouraged me to get my book published. Then I contacted several publishers, and some of them said that they're not accepting poetry right now, or they're not accepting the themes that have written about. But finally, I landed with Lead Start Publishers, and they liked my manuscript and they agreed to publish my book, and then it went on.
It's quite a process to go through a publisher. How did you feel going through that process?
Yeah, actually, it was a little frustrating in the beginning. In last year, when I started my this project in June, so initially I did not get the response I was wanting from the publishers. And the thing was that there were two options: either I should get my poem self-published, my book self-published, or I get it published by a traditional publisher. So I was willing to get my book published by a traditional publisher. So that's why I didn't get a positive response from a few of them. Then I finally got a response from Lead Start. So that was the reason that I was frustrated initially, because I wasn't getting the expected result. But by the end of July or by the first week of August, I finally I was contacted by Lead Start Publishers, and then I discussed with them what I was expecting with this project, and what I wanted to do, how I wanted it to be. So, yeah, but it was interesting to come in contact with different publishers and to gain experience in that way. And I learned a lot.
Well, I have to say, if you started in June and had a relationship by August, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
For sure. So, well, maybe you could read one of your poems from your book.
All right. I'll be reading one of my poems from the book A Leaf Upon a Book. So the poem is titled Misreading. All right. I begin now. Through the glare of the day, through the incandescence of the night, travels our counterfeit self, whose silhouette falls, tugging in the opposite direction. Its variable shapes, a mortal's monsters, hair transpire, invisibly existent creatures, death, the feared inner evil, phobias all, stark isolation, and someone's observant eye. Convoluted conceptions of the pseudo self. How could we not reckon a not erring human self as erred? Thank you.
Boy, not a lot of words, but a lot said. So maybe you could tell me just a little bit as you were writing this poem. What did you hope to share with the reader?
All right. The main thing was that when I was writing this poem, so it was basically based on my own experience. The experience was that I believe that I often misunderstood my own shadow, sometimes for a ghost, or sometimes for something scary, or maybe something I'm afraid of. So it led me to think that we misunderstand often. We misunderstand people, we misunderstand things, we misunderstand situations. And so that led me to write this poem. And then I started writing about my own experience and how I feel, how I mistook my shadow for different things. So my shadow for me represented a lot of different things. So that's how I began writing the poem, kind of also trying to put in mystery in the poem, to put in different images, different things which are associated with fear. So I tried to capture that essence in the poem. And then towards the end, then I put in a question there that, that if we have different conceptions of our own shadow, if we have different views and different opinions about our own shadow, then it sometimes happens that we falter, we err in understanding people also. We sometimes get a different impression of other people, although they may not be so. So that's what the basic idea was.
So the one that I just am really struck by is this idea of immortals monsters. Here transpires invisibly existent creatures, death, feared inner evils, phobias, all. And I think, we all carry a lot of these different, well, you call them monsters, but different things that weigh on us. And
fears and all.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that struck me is we all carry these fears, but in the end, the question you surface is if we accept our own lack of well, whether we call it failings or our own imperfections, probably imperfections is a better word, then we should be willing to accept others' imperfections.
Okay. All right. Yeah, maybe poetry is something that is often open to different interpretations. So, yeah, readers interpret it differently. I may have written it with a different intention. So, yeah, that's always open. So, I basically wrote it with the intention that I kind of asked a question that if we misinterpret our own shadow, and if we are not sure about many things, then how can we be sure about people? It could be that at times we may misunderstand people. So that was basically the idea. But yeah, the poem is always open to interpretations, and people can interpret in their own ways.
And maybe that's the real beauty of poetry, is that it is open to interpretation. And I think poetry is something that for many is hard to approach because they So maybe you could talk a little bit about that. What advice would you give to someone who is new to reading poetry?
Yeah, I think I would give the advice that maybe those who are starting reading poetry, they should begin with reading something light and easy, or maybe something from the earlier poets, because a lot of commentary is available on their poetry. So maybe it's easier to comprehend. And once a person like gets into the practice of comprehending the poetry, it becomes easier for them to read and understand. So the more you read, the more you understand poetry, more you comprehend, and more you read commentary behind those poems, the more you get accustomed to understanding the language. So, like I myself personally initially did not like poetry because of the same reason of not being able to gauge the meaning out of it. So I personally did not like it initially, but as I did my bachelor's and then master's in English, so I had to read a lot of poetry by different poets. So reading different poetry and then discussing it with the teachers in the classroom made it easy to understand what the poets are trying to say, what kind of language is used, what kind of imagery is there. So I would just give the suggestion that the readers should begin with reading the earlier poets, like from the British period, or like from the Victorian period, from the Augustan period, from the Romantic period, from the modern period. So maybe that will help them to get an understanding of poetry, and then they can move on to reading the contemporary ones.
So one of my favorite questions to ask the artists is, a lot of us have what I call a comfort book or a comfort movie or show, someplace where we can go where the characters feel like friends. It's something you've read many times or you've watched it, because when you're feeling a little out of sorts, it's a great place to go. Do you have such a book or a show?
Yeah, as far as the movies and shows are concerned, so Little Women is one such movie that I have watched more than once. So yeah, that is one movie that I really liked and I connected with the characters. So that's one of my favorites. And as far as the books are concerned, so I generally do not read novels more than once, but one of my favorite books is My Antonia by Willa Cather.
Oh, I've not heard of that book. Perhaps you can tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, My Antonia is a book that I read last year, and it's by Willa Cather and one of the classic American novelists. So I read about her during my master's, so I wanted to try out her work. So I tried one of her novels last year, and Willa Cather's My Antonia is basically about. It's set in the Nebraska region or in that region somewhere. So it's about the growth of characters. It's kind of a bildungsroman of sorts, where there is a narrator who was a kid himself, and then there was Antonia, another girl who lived in his neighborhood, and it talks about the growing up of these kids over there, and then how their transformation from kids into adults. So it talks about friendships and the long lasting relations they forge, and alongside My Antonia also talks about the experience of immigrants in America at that time, and there were a lot of immigrants around the narrator in the novel, so it focuses on that. So there were quite a lot of issues, and I really liked it. And the narration was nice, and the description of the place was especially vivid. And I got to visualize places that I've never been to. So I really liked the setting, the descriptions, the imagery, and the society that Cather depicted.
Yeah, that is something that is just really lovely when a writer or a poet brings you to the place and you can close your eyes and visualize where you are and feel that you're there. So that's a real gift for sure. So
Yes.
maybe talk a little bit about what you're hoping for the future as a poet. Are you hoping to publish more
Yes.
books? What are your hopes and dreams?
Yeah, most probably I'm continuing writing poetry for now, and I expect that I would be able to get another book out, and I'm looking forward to it, and I really want to do it. So I'm working towards it, and I'm writing more poetry, and I'm writing poetry at a faster pace now because I've got one book out already. So I'm trying to write more, like more often. So, yeah, that's what I'm currently doing. And I'm also trying to get my poems published in more magazines and journals. So, recently, one of my poems, The Sunset Story, which is one of my first absurd poem. So, that has come out in the second issue of Coalition Works, which is a good home for absurd literature and art. And a few of my poems have also recently come out in an Indian journal, The Chakkar. So they publish poetry and art, etc. So yeah, that has been the most recent publications of mine, and I'm looking forward to writing more.
So, is your poetry, do you write in different languages or are most in English?
Yeah, my native language is Hindi, and I also know Urdu, but I write in English. So English is my second language.
So, how did you decide that you were going to focus your poetry in English?
Because I liked English as a subject since school, and I wanted to study English in my graduation and post graduation also. So when I took up English, so I thought of writing in English as well, because I did not take up pursue Hindi further after my 10th grade. So yeah, English was the subject that I liked, so that's why I continued with that.
Hmm. So, well, that's uh, probably broadens the audience a bit, don't you think?
Yeah, exactly. Writing in English makes my work available to a huge number of audience, and I find it easier to write in this language.
Uh, so, so as you think about artists that have different challenges, the Layered Onion community are folks with lived experience when it comes to um, mental health challenges and just in general, kind of a community meant to really support each other. If you were going to give some wisdom to other artists that face similar challenges, what would it be?
All right. Yeah, first of all, I know that the Layered Onion community is a community of artists who face these health challenges, mental health challenges. So, yeah, I'm glad to be a part of this community, and the best thing out of this opportunity has been that the Layered Onion has really promoted the work of its artists, and I've got a chance to promote my work, to put it out in the chalet, and I've also got a chance to put my book in the online store. So the Layered Onion promotes the work of the members, and that's the best part that I love, and I'm glad to be a part of this community. And I myself, kind of, I have OCD, so I have talked about my experiences in my poetry as well. So, for those who suffer from similar challenges, I would say that writing is a good place, good medium to express your feelings and thoughts and emotions. So, whatever you are going through, maybe writing is a good medium to share it with the world. And it's easier, even instead of saying it out, it's better to write it and to share it with the world. And it's easier to do that way. And I have myself written about my own experiences in the poem Uncharted Ocean. That is one of my poems, and that has been published in Lift Collective. So I have been writing about these experiences in my poetry, and I think that we should do the same. So that is one of my advice to the writers with mental health challenges, that they should express their experiences in writing, and it would help in voicing the similar feelings of other people who aren't doing so or aren't able to do so. So it's good in when we write about it, and it's a good representation of the populace who are suffering from it.
Well, couldn't have said it better for sure. So, well, I would really like to thank you for joining us on this podcast. I really appreciate your time and your work.
All right. Thank you very much. And I also like being here, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us today. It is an honor to talk with these amazing creators. You can see and read the artist's work in the Shallot, our journal of mental health, art, and literature, or on our website, thelayeredonion.com. Thank you.